Hi everyone, I am Surag Ramachandran, working as a documentation manager at Oracle. I lead an international team of technical writers and work in the Financial Services Global Business Unit of Oracle. I have worked more in product development companies like Honeywell, Oracle and so on. Therefore, most of the things mentioned in this presentation are from my experience in product development perspective, though many can be generalized. Here is the agenda for the day. Let me start the webinar by stating some common misconceptions that I hear from different stakeholders. By stakeholders, I mean the development team, the QA team, the product management team, and so on. The built-in spell check and grammar check is relied by many of them. It is also a matter of fact that even that is not done sometimes. Spending some time for that also does not necessarily guarantee a good edited document. These automated tools are really bad in sensing the context. Therefore, the end result is that English may be correct, but technical writing wise, it won't be right. Therefore, a human editor, a human intervention is very much required. There are certain factors that make the editing quite important. They include the misinterpretation of the true meaning and impressions that are created if the document is not properly edited. Speaking from my experience, I have always seen that doing the editing pays off in the long run. And of course, not doing the editing backfires. I started mentioning the misconceptions created by the stakeholders. However, there are certain misconceptions that are created even by the writers to the editors. One common thing is to narrate the challenges during the writing phase and create an impression that there was not much time for every check. That is, before giving the document to the editors, the writers are supposed to proofread the document, the writers are supposed to do a self-review, writers are supposed to have a checklist, etc. But some of them do not do that and they give these kind of excuses. Another thing is the tendency to complete the assignment fast so that one can relax, just like the way the kids used to do in the school. So a trait that is carried out even when they become the adult. Another fact is the self-attestation that one is a better writer than editor. Well, this can be true. It does not mean that one should not be doing the editing checks. So, the attitude of writers themselves sometimes create a feeling that editing can be avoided, but that is not the truth. Now, let me come into the way in which the writers can do more than the self-review. That is the peer review. They can be peer reviewers. That is, if there are no editors in the team, the technical writers double as peer reviewers. So the question is, should there be a specialist editor or whether the peer reviewers will do? So now let me start by going through the advantages of being a peer reviewer. One thing is, it is always easy to find fault with others. So by others I mean the documents of others. And so if you go through the documents of others and if you find fault with that, you can try not to repeat those faults while you are writing. And being an editor or getting into the process as a peer reviewer will develop not just your editing skills, the skills like business operations, project management, subject matter expert interviewing, problem solving. All this will come into picture because you are getting in touch with the writers and being involved with the meeting a particular deadline. So you develop these kind of qualities as well. And you also find that it is a corporate agreed style decisions that are followed and not just the personal preferences. So it will make you appreciate when some other editors are giving comments for your work. Another thing is some of the writers would have started by going through these styles when they joined the company. But the styles are not there forever, or the style guidelines, they change and they sometimes become outdated. So if you do not do a peer review, you also become outdated on these kind of aspects. And the thing that is important is to know how to present the review not as a personal attack. You are actually criticizing the document only. So these are the things that the specialist editor also does. So should there be a specialist editor? Well, there can be a specialist editor, but what I have seen in my experience is that if all follow traffic rules, traffic policies is not required. Similarly, when the editor gives a lot of comments slowly but steadily and people start putting them even when they are right, so that the role of a specialist editor comes down after a while. So there can be specialist editors, there can also be people who do the peer review, or the writers who double as peer reviewers. So peer reviewers should be definitely going through the style guide at least twice and implement the changes. They should also form special interest groups among themselves and share the good practices. And it is always important to follow a style guide. And if there is no company style guide, the common style guides like Chicago Manlo style or Microsoft Manlo style should be followed. In case the style guide is not fully answering the quality concerns, an addendum can be generated specific to your company domain or your products. In case there are conflicts between the style guides and your addendum supplement, your supplement can be given preference. This will ensure that it is not the individual preference but the corporate standards that should be considered. And for mediations, definitely the documentation manager or a senior technical writer can step in. Now the expectations that are there from an editor. That is how to build a relationship between editor and a writer. So the writers should know that the editor is not a teacher who provides detailed suggestions. However, the writers can ask the rationale, then incorporate everything that the editor gives for the sake of that. And there will be many instances in which you differ with the company style guide. I talked about the company style guide, but there are many occasions in which you may have a different opinion when it comes to stylistic issues. But if you think your point does not bring a big value addition, I think it will be better to follow the company style guide. And another thing to consider is that there is a slight difference between reviewing and editing. Reviewing is a process in editing, and reviewing is done anticipating the suggestions of change. And editing is done with more reviews with an intention of going back and changing the draft till it is ready for publication. Now, there are general complaints that I hear from the writers, from the editors, about the way they are treated or respected in the company or in the organization. And I hear similar complaints even from the QA team, from the graphical design team, from the network team, etc. So the fact is, generally when a company is set up, they are keen to get into the market. Nowadays there are a lot of startups, so you will see that these companies are keen to get into the market. Then they reach a particular situation where they cannot proceed without certain aspects like better QA, technical writing, editorial teams, etc. Then they are set. And there can be exceptions, but I am saying a generic manner. That is generally what I have seen in some of the organization. So the editors, they can be specialists or peer reviewers, or sometimes the manager performing that role. And the style guide, you can have it in-house or for the standard ones. I'm talking about as the roles and how the editorial team should mature as the organization mature. And yes, you should also create a network so that you can share the information so that all are benefited. Now I started talking about the stakeholders. Let me extend the focus to some other stakeholders like sales, implementation team, trainers and translators. So does the stakeholders really care about the documentation? Do they really value a good edited document? Well, once again, talking from my experience, I have seen that I've seen some of the sales slides, and I've seen that they used to bring in the usability and documentation aspects also during the SWOT analysis, that is strength, weakness, opportunity, threat analysis, while comparing with their competitors. That is, they project these things, usability, documentation, etc., as key differentiators to win against the competitors. For example, the XYZ company has a weak GUI, whereas we have a good GUI for doing so and so task. Or the documentation for performing complex tasks is quite minimal for a particular company, and it has many typos. With the case of another company, but our documentation, it is properly edited, it is clear, it is up to a point, kind of a thing. And when it comes to the implementers, they use this documentation for installation and configuration, and then they are not able to install or configure properly. They raise bugs against the documents and get it corrected. The trainers, they use the user guide and online help for preparing the training materials. The translators, they also use the documents like user guide and also glossary. So yes, the stakeholders really use it. Whether they acknowledge it or not, they all use it and they all care about it. Now the thing is how to bring a value addition in editing. So value addition, this is something that I hear throughout my career. So I thought to have a wordplay on that and made this edition as edition because I'm talking about editing. So what I'm telling here is that the editors can provide their value beyond just copy editing. That is, they can correct the inaccurate information in the document, they can correct the outdated information in the document, they can correct incomplete information. So these things come generally with their experience, and when they find such instances, they have to point it out. And they also should be looking for overwhelming information. That is, they need to see whether the why part is there. That is, rather than how something is done, why something is there, what something is, kind of things. That is, generally it is easy to write the procedures, whereas it is difficult to write the concepts. So they should be looking for this conceptual information, see that there are enough conceptual information. They also look for terminology that we all in the organization know because we have been here for a while. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the users know them. So they should be pointing out of such occurrences, and they should also inform their writers that there should be a process flow diagram which will tell the big picture without making the users read the full document to understand the complete picture. And they should also looking for valid business scenarios or valid samples or examples so that the concept can be explained better to the audience. Now let me talk something about the present day editing. That is, nowadays the companies, they do not operate in one geographical area, or we all nowadays write for international audience and we write for non-native speakers. And we also write for better translation so that there are less ambiguity in the documents. Therefore, we should be aware that there are different variations of English for technical documentation, and these are some of them. So there is the plain English that is used for consumer and e-government. There is the controlled English that is used in manufacturing and services industries. and then there is the simplified technical English, which was, I think, where all others started. So it was developed for the aerospace industry, and that was when this different flavors of English was used for technical writing for the first time in my experience. So let me narrate the differences between them. That is, simplified English was developed primarily for aerospace industries, and later other industries adopted that. It is a set of writing rules and a dictionary of controlled vocabulary. So the writing rules include rules for words, rules for verbs, sentences, procedures, and so on. For example, a procedural rule is something like keep only one instruction per sentence. A controlled vocabulary's example can be something like use the term opening instead of aperture. So that is the approved usage is something like get access to the control unit through the opening in the side of the tank, and one should avoid the usage like get access to the control unit through the aperture in the side of the tank. So it is a language of writing rules and a dictionary of controlled vocabulary. And the controlled languages do use writing rules to simplify sentence structure, just like the simplified English. So different companies develop their own version of controlled English. An example of controlled English is IBM's Easy English. So that is an instance of one company developing their own controlled vocabulary or controlled technical writing English. Different versions of controlled English are developed with the objective of increasing the readability and reducing the translation costs. So these languages differ in the number of rules they use, and also the examples that they use are based on the industry in which they are. So a rule is like, say for procedural instruction, use the pattern like verb or infinitive plus article plus object plus punctuation mark. So it will be like select the menu item full stop, something like that. Therefore, this was all that I wanted to convey to you. You may contact me in my email ID for further discussions. Thanks for listening.